call to order the Sparks City Council meeting for January 24th, 2022 with a roll call.
Mayor Lawson,
Here.
council members Abbott,
Here.
Vanderwell,
Here.
Anderson,
Here.
Bybee,
Here.
Dare,
Here.
City Attorney Adams, City Manager Cruz.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to Pastor Pete Vossler, the invocation.
Glad you guys are all standing.
Speak loud.
You got it. Let's pray. God, we've come a long way in 21 months, but we have a long way to go. And I pray that you would give the city council ideas, creative thoughts, that the wisdom of God would be in their minds and in their hearts. And I know that you've got good things for us. I'm also looking here and I pray that you would protect our police department and every single person that serves and our chief all the way down, that just give them great wisdom. And this is a safe city and we want to keep it safe. Thank you for our fire department. Bless them, Lord. Bless their business and all the trucks that they have on the road and all the good things that they do. And this is a great city. And may you bless it from the north, south, east, and the west. And bless this meeting today. And we ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. All right, let's keep standing for the pledge. Mr. Abbott, will you lead us?
Yeah, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. All right. Move on to public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, I did not receive any public comment.
Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? If not, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Looking for an approval of the agenda, add or remove or take something out of order. Their computer, Ms. Vanderwell,
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Ms. Bybee.
I second that motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the minutes, looking for an approval of the minutes and additions, subtractions. Mr. Dare,
I move to approve the minutes of the Sparks City Council meeting for January 10th, 2022 as presented.
Mr. Anderson.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 7.0, announcements, presentation, recognition items, and items of special interest. 7.1, Ms. Bybee, you have a proclamation for National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And I think we have ISIS here. Come on down and have a seat. We'll have you say something afterwards. We're putting you on the spot for our millions of viewers out there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas human trafficking is a serious crime and violation of human rights involving the use of physical force, coercion, or fraud to force a person into labor or sexual exploitation, and whereas human trafficking can happen to people of all ages, genders, races, or religious backgrounds, and whereas women who are victims of human trafficking are most often used for sexual exploitation, children who are victims of human trafficking are most used for begging, child pornography, or child labor, and men who are victims of human trafficking are most often used for slave labor or involuntary servitude. And whereas it is estimated that 1 in 5 victims of human trafficking is a child, and whereas victims of human trafficking frequently do not seek help due to language barriers, fear of their traffickers, or fear of law enforcement, and while the number of arrests for these crimes has increased significantly, the number of incidents reported far outnumbers the arrests. And whereas a common misconception about human trafficking is that it does not happen in the United States, but this is tragically false. There are over 200,000 estimated incidents of human trafficking in the United States every year. And Nevada has the highest rate of human trafficking in the United States, with an estimated 7.5 incidents per 100,000 residents. And whereas local law enforcement and their partner agencies continue to educate the public on the violence and exploitation that is human trafficking, and it is the responsibility of all members of society to identify and report suspected incidents. Therefore, on behalf of Mayor Ed Lawson, Mayor of the City of Sparks, we hereby proclaim January 2022 as National Human Trafficking Awareness Month.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to add?
We appreciate your attention to, unfortunately, this blight that we have, and for acknowledging the Sparks Police Department and our sister agencies.
Will you give us your name, please, for the record?
Isis Morales?
Thank you, Isis. Thank you for being here. Charlene's going to come down there and take a picture with you. And the chief, we got to get the chief some publicity. She's kind of hard to miss. Okay. Move on to item 7.2. Boards and Commissions vacancy announcement, Truckee River Flood Fund Advisory Committee. Mr. Kreutz.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the council. For the record, Neil Kreutz, your city manager, here today to advertise a single vacancy on the Truckee River Fund Advisory Committee. They're looking for a City of Sparks representative. The representative must be a resident of the city and will serve at the pleasure of the Sparks City Council. Applications for this position are due before Friday, February 11th at 5 p.m. And the best way to get that is to fill out a community service application on the city's website, www.cityofsparks.us/getinvolved. It's all one big word. Once you're there, click on volunteering for a Sparks Board, Commission, or Committee, fill out the form and press submit. Thank you, Mayor Lawson.
Thank you. And we'll move on to 7.3, acknowledgement of the 2021 Hometown Christmas Parade winners and Grand Marshals, Francine. And I saw D&S Tow walk in the door. So if you have your car parked illegally, now would be a good time to move it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. It's my pleasure to present these awards for everyone that works so hard at the Christmas parade. And I would not be here without also acknowledging the people that also help the event, our volunteers at Hot August Nights, Livingstone's Church, Boys and Girls Club, and also all the staff that works at that very, very large event. But anyway, let's get to these awards. I do not know exactly who's going to be here. I know our Grand Marshals could not be here today, but do we have Singers of the Sage? I know we have D&S Tow. Would you like to come down, please?
I'm going to take a picture with Ms. Zinser for sure.
Francine, which is the award? What did they win?
They won Best Business.
Best business, yeah.
Okay.
Good Sparks business.
Thank you. You do a great job. Thank you.
Congratulations.
The Parading Arabians. Best Animal Group.
They're not counting you in, Don. Bill's on top. So much fun.
We have Jonathan Montalongo. They won Best Costume Group. Alan John Olson. Yes, ma'am? Best Vehicle.
Railroaders.
And the overall winners, Washoe County Library System. This is the third time you've won best overall. You guys do such a great job. Thank you so much.
Well done.
Did you know that with the library? She was dressed as one of the,
A tree.
it was an elf, wasn't it?
I thought it was a tree.
Was she a tree? Oh, she was an elf.
Oh, elf.
But there was a tree near her. There
Yeah.
were a couple of them as funny costumes.
Wish you a Merry Christmas.
No singing, no singing.
I know. He doesn't want Christmas ever to be over.
All right, let's move on to, oh, golly. The consent items. That thing gets me every time, right in the funny bone.
Good job, Francine.
Yeah, something, a noodle. Let's move on to consent items. Anyone wishing to pull a consent item? There's only one. Not, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Abbott
I move to approve consent item 8.1 as submitted.
and Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, move on to general business. First reading, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first reading of Bill Number 2791, an ordinance providing for the conducting and holding of a primary election in the city of Sparks on the 14th day of June, 2022, and a general election in the city of Sparks on the 8th day of November, 2022, identifying municipal offices seeking candidates, authorizing Washoe County to conduct the election, and setting the filing fees for declarations of candidacy. A public hearing will be held, and Bill 2791 will be acted upon at the regular meeting of the Sparks City Council on Monday, February 14th, 2022 at 2 p.m. at the Sparks City Council Legislative Building. Thank you.
Okay, 9.2. Consideration, discussion, and possible direction to apply for FEMA staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant to hire 6 firefighters for 3 years. Chief Reed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council. I'm Jim Reed, your fire chief, and similar to last month, I'm here to ask you to apply for a federal grant. Last month, it was for stuff or equipment. This month, it's for people. And just like you said, I'm looking for a direction to apply for 6 people. So these 6 people would add 2 per battalion. So our current staffing is 25 per battalion. So we'd kick it up to 27 on each battalion, A, B, and C. If awarded this grant for every 2 people and the 6 total, the salaries and benefits are covered for 3 years, and there is no matching for that. We would have to cover, and that's always a flexible point right now with supplies, but about $16,000 in the personal protective equipment that we do have to purchase and supply, but salaries and benefits are completely covered. We've been trying to get this grant for a while. We put in last year. We put in for 3. And go back a few years, we were awarded this grant, and then we didn't accept it because council decided at that time that we weren't sure if we could keep these people employed. And that's a very big question. Even on the application, it asked, can you employ these people after the 3 years? And I can answer yes. I can't predict the future exactly, but I believe with the opening of Station 6, that this is going to flow right into that in about 3 years. So I recommend approval, and we'll take any questions if you have it.
Questions from the council?
Oh, yes. I'm getting there.
His finger doesn't work right.
I move to approve.
We're gonna do questions first.
Did you beat him?
Mr. Dare.
I'm getting, yeah, my
We'll
computer.
just forget about it.
I'm there. Well,
It's like the cone of silence on
I know,
Get Smart. It
I'm
never works.
working on it, buddy. Thank you, appreciate it. I think this is fantastic, and I think it's awesome that we can do these, and I know that we've applied in the past into the different history. So with this said, just for the public and everything, are these full firefighters? They can do everything that anybody else does? We did some different things with police that had a certain focus. Is there a certain focus with these? Are these general firefighters that we?
Well, so the way we're, at least our last testing and hiring, we were hiring firefighter EMTs with the intent that, you know, the one award that we did win last year was to train some firefighters as paramedics. So that would be our intent, would be to train those people. Obviously, if we get the people who are firefighter paramedics already, then yeah, thumbs up, we're good to go.
Gotcha, very good. And so anybody out there that wanted to be a fireman, right now is a good time to come on in and do their best. We still have openings right now anyway, don't we?
Yeah, so we actually just interviewed again last week, and it will be pushing for another written test coming up here in the spring to keep
Fantastic.
that system rolling, yes.
Thank you, good job on that.
Okay, any other questions from the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to motion, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, before I make a motion, I just want to say likewise, thank you very much for reaching out on these different grants. It sure helps us to justify it, saying at least we get some assistance with it. But I believe it's needed, like you said, especially with Station 6 that'll be coming on at some point, hopefully here in the near future.
Right.
I'll go ahead and move to direct city manager to apply for FEMA staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant to hire 6 firefighters for 3 years.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
Okay, got a motion as a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And surprise, surprise, carries unanimously.
One more thing,
Yes, sir?
I'd like to
Is
thank.
it gonna cost us money?
No, I just want to thank Yesenia. She is helping me go through this, and we're throwing narratives back and forth, so it's
Thank
very
you.
good. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Thank you.
Anytime we can get free money from the government, even though it's ours, getting some of it back is good. Okay, consideration, discussion, and possible approval to increase the current $150,000 professional service agreement, AC 5782, with Premier Inspection Services by $79,200 to a total of $229,200 to provide additional building inspector for the remainder of fiscal year 2022. Whew, that's a mouthful. Mark.
Thank you very much, Mayor Lawson, and good afternoon to council members. For the record, Mark Miranda, building official for the City of Sparks. So in order to maintain our current inspection services, we like to have at least be able to respond to inspections within 24 hours. And so we've noticed lately that we've been having to put off inspections from sometimes up to 2 to 3 days. So in order to complete our customer service mission of trying to provide inspection in a timely manner to our community, that's one of the reasons why I'd like to increase the inspection complement by 1. The second is we do have a lot of development in the pipeline. We've got the 5 Bridges project coming on, which I'm sure you guys are all very aware of. We've also got multiple apartment complexes that are poised and ready to go, in addition to all of our current work that we're currently trying to stay up with. So we've also got a few other approved projects that are ready to go as soon as they decide that they want to go forward with them, like the extended living over there where the Helms office used to be. And also Panera is all ready to go out the door whenever they decide that they want to build their restaurant. So we're anticipating a really active year in the next year. So with that, I would like to ask, if you guys like to ask me any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Questions from the council? Ms. Bybee.
Yeah, Mark, my only question would be, obviously, we have a need for it, and I agree with you, we need to be as timely as we can in those inspections, because time is money for everyone. So I appreciate that, see the need for it. So this would be the one position through fiscal year 2022, and then when we go into fiscal year '23, we revisit whether that becomes part of the budget, that we're keeping that as permanent, whether we need more, we'll revisit it at that time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Bybee, for that question, because yes, I have put that into our fiscal '23 budget to keep this person on through that next budget year. So this one gets us up to July.
Okay.
And then I've also asked to basically continue it on through the next budget year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Anderson.
I think I ask this question every year, but I just want to clarify. So this is a third party that will be coming and doing it. We have our own inspectors. Why would we not just add more to our staff?
Well, it's kind of a really good question. Thank you for that question, Councilman Anderson. It's because the contract is more flexible. We can, if we can't control how many inspections come through our door, but with the flexibility of third-party inspectors, we can control the flexibility of how much we work them. So there might be a time where we might not work them for a week because we get slow. And it's not like a permanent FTE where they're here and they're gonna be here. And then I think another good question is like, well, when we kind of went through that '08 downturn, we had some battle scars from all that, as we all know. So we've really found that this is a really good way of augmenting our inspection services and not adding to our complement quite yet. Now, we will, I think, in the future, but right now, we like the flexibility of a contract inspector.
Thank you, and I agree. If you build up your full-time employee, at some point, we're going to see another downturn, and it's quite possible at that point, you're right, you're talking about now layoffs of individuals. So, all right, thank you very much.
Mr. Dare.
Thank you.
Yeah, quick question when it comes to who we're getting. I get the idea why we do this and everything. One of the only potential downturns, and probably the first time I've heard it was recently, is that we're having people maybe outside of Sparks that doesn't understand the culture and who we are of Sparks, potentially doing this. So how much are we spending time with any of these people who are from another place, another whatever? We're sending them something. They're not necessarily working for us, don't know the culture, what we do, that kind of thing. And do we work pretty close with them? How does that work? Because there was a question that was asked of me this week.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Dare, for the question. They integrate right into our inspection offices with the rest of our inspectors. So we train them to absorb the culture of Sparks.
Okay.
And they realize it's a small town, and we're here for customer service is our number one goal, and in a timely manner. Like Councilwoman Bybee said, time is money out there. So especially on the inspection side. So that's, we do look for local people to hire through that third party. A lot of the people that we hire live here locally. And so,
Okay.
we are hiring local people.
Thank you. It was the first time I heard because we've done this for a little while. It's the first time I've heard anything of that from somebody in our area. So thank you.
Okay, any other question from the council? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve an increase to the current $150,000 professional services agreement, AC 5782, with Premier Inspection Services by $79,200 to a total of $229,200 to provide one additional building inspector for the remainder of fiscal year 2022.
Mr. Abbott.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries, I think unanimously. Yes, unanimously.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
guys very
Mark.
much. I appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it. Okay, moving on to item 9.4. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of one of two potential resolutions finding a petition for the formation of a special improvement district and issuance of approximately $13,247,000 of special assessment bonds to finance infrastructure improvements at the Five Ridges development located at 55 Highlands Ranch Parkway in Sparks, Nevada. Either is not for the public interest or for the public. That doesn't make sense. Anyways, that's where I'm gonna stop. Mr. Martini.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson. I'm John Martini, your Assistant City Manager, joined up here today with our Chief Financial Officer, Jeff Kronk.
Good afternoon.
As the mayor introduced, we're here today to review a petition from the Five Ridges Development Company for the formation of a special improvement district for the purposes of funding infrastructure improvements to support Five Ridges development. So before I begin, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, let me give you a brief overview of what we're going to do in this presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about what an SID is, SID being a special improvement district. We're going to provide the council with a summary of the petition. Each of you received the document in the staff report, but we'll go through a quick summary. We're going to talk about the prerequisite requirements that are in state law for processing and reviewing a petition. We'll offer the council some definitions of public interest. We will present to you staff's recommendation on this issue. We'll offer some analysis to support our recommendation. We'll go through the alternatives before the council today. NRS, Mr. Mayor, NRS 271 does allow for the petitioner to address the council to present the petitioner's views on the petition. So after Jeff and I present, I think it's appropriate to ask the petitioner to come up and state his views. And then after that's over, Jeff and I will be available to answer any questions you have. So with that, what is an SID, or a Special Improvement District? SIDs are allowed through NRS 271, and that piece of our state law authorizes local governments to form these special improvement districts for the purposes of financing infrastructure to support development. A couple of requirements in NRS 271, the properties that get the assessments placed upon them must directly benefit from the infrastructure that the financing will support. The financing is actually done through something called special assessment bonds that NRS does authorize the council to put in place. For the purposes of today's presentation, we're just going to call those the SID bonds. And then the ultimately, the property owners, the owners of the property of which the assessments are put in place upon or levied upon, pay those bonds back over time. So to summarize the petition that was submitted for our consideration here today, we're going to do three things. We're going to go over what the proposed SID boundary is. We're going to talk about the improvements that the petition asks to be considered to be eligible for inclusion in the SID, and then Mr. Kronk will go through highlights of the proposed financing plan. So the graphic that you see before you comes straight out of the petition. I apologize, upon scanning it got a little granular, so let me walk you through it, and here we're having this problem again. Okay. So in the petition, the SID boundary is to be placed over the 10 villages. So let me just, Pyramid Highway is here to the right of the screen. Of course, this is Highland Ranch Parkway coming up to the west. You can see the 10 villages. They're outlined in light blue and one here in dark blue. This SID boundary would then, therefore, if you can imagine just the boundaries of each of the villages, that will become the SID boundary. About 208 of the 421.58 acres, I believe it is, that comprise the Five Ridges boundary would have the SID placed over it. So eligible improvements. So the petition is asking for 3 of the infrastructure projects to be considered as eligible for acquisition by the city council through the SID. For purposes of giving them a name, the petition has called them the Phase 1 improvements, the Highland Ranch Parkway improvements, and finally, the Phase 2 improvements. The Phase 1 improvements are shown on the graphic before you. Again, Pyramid Highway is off to the right, Sparks Boulevard coming up from the south, becoming Highland Ranch Parkway. And then, of course, you can now see the Five Ridges Parkway Road, which is the main access into the project, and Antelope Ridge Parkway. The kind of improvements that are included under this Phase 1 improvement request, you can see the red lines kind of going off to the west. So first off, there will be a potable water connection. So water lines will be brought from the existing Sun Valley General Improvement District water tank into the project. Again, another connection for potable water lines here at an existing stub out by the subdivision just to the south. Those water lines will be constructed through Highland Ranch Parkway and then brought up into the project. These improvements also include sewer, storm drain, curbs and gutters, and roads, particularly Five Ridges Parkway and Antelope Ridge Parkway. The estimated cost for the Phase 1 improvements is about $10.1 million. I'm going to go through the estimated costs for each of the projects. The estimated costs are relative to, about June, July of last year. So as you all know, we've seen some inflation, so it's likely the costs are going to be a little higher. The Highland Ranch Parkway improvements are shown on this figure. Again, Pyramid Highway off to our right, and you can see the Greater Five Ridges project here in the center of the map. As you'll recall, Highland Ranch Parkway will need to be upgraded a bit with the development of Five Ridges project. These improvements include widening the road to 4 lanes, putting in the turning movements, as well as infrastructure with regard to signals at Highland Ranch Parkway and Pyramid Highway and the project entrance. The estimated cost is about $4.7 million. And then finally, the Phase 2 improvements consist of bringing water lines in from Sun Valley General Improvement District, located off here to the west of the project. Those water lines will need to be brought into kind of the northwestern extent of the Five Ridges project in kind of Phase 2 of the project. So they comprise just potable water and come to about $4.6 million. And with that, Jeff will go through the proposed financing plan.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. As mentioned, I am Jeff Kronk, your Chief Financial Officer for the record. As John mentioned before, I just wanted to provide one slide that really boils down, really just in a short look, what the petitioner is proposing for their financing plan. And that includes asking the city to issue special assessment bonds, as was previously mentioned, which the property owners would repay over a 30-year period. So what those bonds would do is provide the petitioner with net bond proceeds of approximately $11.3 million, which they would use to fund infrastructure that we've been talking about. And again, then the bonds then would be paid back by the individual homeowners once the build out happens by way of an assessment that's attached to their individual parcel. That's secured by a lien on their property. And again, like I said, paid back over a period of 30 years, which is the maximum allowed by law and which is being sought by the petitioner. So that's the long and the short of it. Like I said, John mentioned before, we're going to be available to answer questions, but I just wanted to give you kind of a boiled down version of what's in the plan. And then I think I'm going to turn it back over to John and to walk through the prerequisites for setting up an SID.
Thank you, Jeff. So when we look at NRS 271 with regard to receipt of a petition, there's kind of 2 general requirements that have to happen before it can even come in front of the council for consideration. The first is that 2/3 of the property owners included in the petition must agree to be in the petition. In this case, Five Ridges Development Company owns 100% of the project, so check, that prerequisite is met. And then kind of the second topic is that all of the projects that are included in the petition for consideration for acquisition need to be of a type authorized directly by NRS 271. And in this case, everything that I showed you in the Phase 1, the Highland Ranch Parkway improvements, as well as the Phase 2 improvements, are actually included in NRS 271. So check that box. So with those two, the next step is to come before you and have the city council determine if the formation of a special improvement district is of the public interest. Interestingly enough, public interest is actually not defined in NRS 271. So that makes the city council, the definition or the determination of what public interest is to the council's discretion. In order to kind of help out with this concept of what public interest is, staff offers 4 definitions of public interest for your consideration today. The first definition comes from the lawdictionary.org, and it is the welfare of the public as compared to the welfare of a private individual or company. The second definition comes from Black's Law Dictionary, and it comes in 2 parts. The first is the general welfare of a populace considered as warranting recognition and protection. The second part of that definition is something in which the public as a whole has a stake, especially an interest that justifies governmental regulation. The third definition comes from dictionary.com, and it's again in 2 parts: the welfare or well-being of the general public, the Commonwealth. Second part being appeal or relevance to the general populace. And the fourth definition comes from the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, and it is defined as the general welfare and rights of the public that are to be recognized, protected, and advanced. So given those definitions, as we considered the petition, staff recommends the city council find the petition not in the public interest, and we have 2 reasons. The first is we generally feel the proposed SID places the welfare of the petitioner above the welfare of the general public. And secondly, there are considerations for precedent and policy. In analyzing this issue of public interest, I'd like to remind the city council, and you're all aware, we've had a development agreement in place with the petitioner that dates back to 2018. Yeah, it's been amended a couple of times. There were 2 amendments in 2020. The development agreement is a document for which we can all look at. It provides the developer with the entitlements, what can be built, what can't be built. And in the agreement, it also, Section 3 of the agreement also talks about rights and responsibilities with regard to infrastructure. So in Section 3 of the development agreement, as we looked at the project, we took lots of things into consideration. We know obviously that infrastructure needs to be built to support any kind of development. So there's on-site infrastructure, which is stuff you need to build the homes. And then there's off-site infrastructure, which is needed to mitigate the impacts of that development on existing infrastructure. So back to the 3 proposed projects that I showed you, the Phase 1 improvements and the Phase 2 improvements should be considered as on-site infrastructure, so necessary to build the homes. The Highland Ranch Parkway infrastructure should be considered as an off-site requirement to mitigate the impacts that development will someday have upon Highland Ranch Parkway. In the development agreement, the developer has agreed to construct all the infrastructure and further has agreed to bear at the developer's expense the cost of building that infrastructure. In the case of Five Ridges development, none of the infrastructure shown in those or included in the petition is of an extraordinary nature. So let me talk about that a little bit. All this infrastructure supports either the on-site requirements to build the homes that are included in Five Ridges, or to mitigate the impacts those homes will have on Highland Ranch Parkway. There's nothing extraordinary about it. This is normal infrastructure. When I say not extraordinary, I'm going to ask you to think about the Five Ridges project. It sits at the edge of our corporate boundary. It is what I call a terminal project. When Five Ridges is built, that's going to be it. We're done up there. If next to the Five Ridges project, there were several hundred or even a couple thousand acres included in Sparks Master Plan that included other land use types besides residential, say industrial, job generating type of land uses. And Five Ridges came first. And to get to those other properties that lie on the periphery of Five Ridges, we realized that Five Ridges Parkway would need to be extended all the way to the border of those other properties. We'd want to drag water, sewer, connections to storm drain along with that roadway. We could consider for public interest that using Five Ridges as a gateway project to bring all that infrastructure into land that through our master plan we've already determined needs to be developed, has different uses than residential, then staff could see potentially a public interest in doing two things: bringing that gateway infrastructure up to those additional properties that we have in our master plan determined are in our best interest. And two, by doing so, we could form an SAD over the Five Ridges development as well as those adjacent properties to create a mechanism to repay the developer for the extra infrastructure we would ask of Five Ridges to construct so that the other properties could develop in the future. In this case, we don't have that. Five Ridges is a terminal project. The infrastructure simply supports the homes that he's entitled to build. So, in looking at it through that lens, we feel that formation of the SID provides the petitioner with low-cost public financing, and we feel that that is not to the welfare of the future property owners that will buy into the Five Ridges project, as they will pay that bill as assessment liens on their property for 30 years. So in a nutshell, the developer has agreed through a development agreement with the City of Sparks to bear the cost of building infrastructure, and this proposed SID will take that burden of paying for the infrastructure and transfer it to the future residents in Five Ridges. So it runs a little counter with our development agreement. So on to the last piece of analysis of precedent and policy. Finding the petition for the public interest will kind of do two things. It will set a precedent for future decisions, and it will in fact create policy. So before you today, in your consideration of whether this is in the public interest or not, should the council think that it is in the public interest, that will mark a change in the way that we have done things here in Sparks over the last 20 years. As you're well aware, we have many master plan communities that are 100% residential development. Wingfield Springs, Foothills at Wingfield, Cimarron, Upper Highlands, all those properties out in the NSSOI, or what we call IFSA 1, were predominantly 100% residential properties. All of them were entitled and permitted through the City of Sparks. Most of them are built now, if not all built. None of them benefited from the formation of an SID for the purposes of paying for the infrastructure needed to support those residential developments. We simply have not done that. So as we move forward today, it will, if you choose to find this petition in the public interest, as far as precedent goes, when we have future projects that come in of a similar nature to the Five Ridges project, one of them jumps out right at me right now, Sonoma Highlands. If you find for the public interest, an expectation will be set in the development community, as you will also set a policy saying it is in the public interest. That will have two effects. The development community will feel that SIDs are the way to do their infrastructure to support their developments. And two, the next time we come, staff, meaning like me and Jeff, or any of the staff members, come before you for the consideration of an SID, we will rely on the policy set by the council today when we present that next petition. And finally, Mr. Mayor, there are three alternatives before the council today, or presented for your consideration. And again, as you found in the title of the staff report, a little bit different procedure. Normally when we bring a resolution, we're bringing just a single resolution to you. This agenda item actually comes with two resolutions, and they match the alternatives that are presented before you. So the first alternative that you have is the City Council find that the Five Ridges Special Improvement District is not of the public interest. One of the resolutions matches that. It simply says not in the public interest. If that alternative is taken, all matters with regard to the petition will be resolved and over, will be done. Your second alternative is that you find it for the public interest, and there is a resolution that matches that alternative. And in that resolution, you will proclaim or resolve that it is in the public interest, and that resolution also provides direction to the city manager to proceed with all items necessary for the formation of the SID. And third, the city council, you may take no action today and provide the city manager with alternate direction. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that kind of concludes what Jeff and I have. As I mentioned before, we need to allow time for the petitioner to share his views, as state law puts it, with the council. And Jeff and I will be back to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the council to hold your questions till after we hear from the petitioner also.
Great. John and Jeff, thank you for that presentation. And Mayor and City Council members, I'm Blake Smith. I'm president of Five Rivers Development. I'm here today. I have a presentation to walk through. John and Jeff were kind enough to present kind of the technical fundamental aspects of the SID request. Let me just make sure I know what I'm doing here. I also have with me is Carter Froelich. He is president of Launch. Great, thank you. He is joined, he is our, thank you. He is our primary consultant on the SID. Their firm specializes in the formation of SIDs, and I believe has been involved in almost all of the SID formations in the state of Nevada. A very a wealth of knowledge that I've asked to attend in case there are any additional technical or other questions that we had here. But I wanted to start off today, if I could, and just take a couple minutes and bring you up to speed. Five Ridges was entitled over the past several years here. We actually broke ground last May on it, and I thought I would bring you folks up to speed on where we stand at this point with the project. Again, as John outlined, we classify this project as 10 different villages. Villages 1 through 10, they entail with current planning about 1,249 lots. We are in contract with those lots to be developed over different timeframes and different deliveries with that. This business plan, I wanted to state to you, is much different. We are a developer in Northern Nevada. We specialize in residential development. We've delivered about 6,500 lots to the community in our developments here. This one in particular is different from one of our other flagships called Somerset, which was developed in Reno, Nevada. Somerset had a business model in it, which was to literally target high-end development within it, $1 million plus homes, extensive amenities. We developed that to target a high-end community with it. This project here, we went to the other side of the spectrum with it. And this is specifically targeted to develop and deliver affordability and the middle market to it here. As it's used, there's different terms, the missing middle, other things. I'll walk through it here, but we have specific villages in here that we are trying to target what could be some of the lower priced projects in the Sparks and Spanish Springs areas out here. They're developed specifically to be high density, allowing the builder to bring a product to it that's affordable. And affordable, when we started this, we were targeting products that were in the 200s, high 200s, with inflation and other costs, as John and Jeff mentioned there. Those can be floating up into the 300s, but we're trying desperately to try and make sure that we keep that there. Some of it we can control with land prices, some we cannot, just with the market out there. But with that, I wanted to come back and show what we've done. It's been busy. We to date have $41 million invested into Five Ridges. Since we broke ground in May, you can take a look here of what we've developed here. I'm going to use this cursor. Does this go? Okay, great. We have actually gone in and developed the first affordable 2 paths. This is Highland Ranch Parkway here coming up. This is Five Ridges Parkway, as you can see, being developed into it here. This is Village 1A. This is a townhome product. We liquidated that product in November. That builder is now coming in with final maps to the city here. This is Village 1B, also sold to the same builder. This is a duplex product. Again, targeted, this was targeted to be at 300 or less. This was targeted to be in the 350 range when we broke ground with this. You can see into it further as we've developed into the road infrastructure that John was outlining in here. You can see the road coming up into here. And these are additional villages that are being developed inside the project. This is villages, actually, this is Village 6 and Village 4 that are being developed out here. We will, in the next 3 weeks, close with Lennar on both of these villages. This will be your mid-price product. These lots are in sizes from 45 to 90 feet in depth, up to 600 by 100 feet in depth. And this will be your mid-market price of the product here. Again, a different angle of it showing the project. Again, this is Village 6 here. This is Village 4, and they will also acquire Village 2, which is being developed here in the background here. The project will continue on. Actually, paving of the road will occur. Curb and gutter, all the utilities are in the road system. As John had mentioned, Phase 1 is part of that, is the road system being developed in here. We have worked, Q&D has approximately 30 to 40 pieces of equipment up there, have been working diligently through there. All the utilities are in the road-based system now. The road is based out. Curb and gutter will be paved in 2 weeks, and asphalt, because the batch plants are closed, all of the roads within here will be developed, all the main backbone roads will be paved by the 3rd or 4th week in March. The community is coming together. As I mentioned, we're closing the first pads in there. That means that development housing will be, if it tracks well with the final maps and the processing in here, the first homes will probably be delivered in the first quarter of next year. It'll take 6 or 7 months to get a final map. It'll take them 4 or 5 months to build the infrastructure and bring the homes up. So in the first quarter, you should see homes coming up on this pad and this pad here. And the purpose of this SID, as you've mentioned, and specifically the public benefit as we see it here, staff has outlined a couple comments here on why they do not believe there's public interest. We and our consultants are actually on the other spectrum of that and are somewhat confused on how we can't find public interest in here. As it was mentioned in there, our development agreement, which was approved by this council, does require us to develop out the infrastructure on Highland Ranch Parkway and also improve this entire Pyramid Highway intersection here with double rights, double lefts, double pass-through lanes within it. In that development agreement, we specifically requested the ability to come forward and ask for an SID, knowing what our business model looked like and our cash flows within here. That requirement that is within the development agreement states that we will have to build and widen Highland Ranch Parkway and the Sparks Boulevard by the 650th C of O. So that's 650 homes occupied by residents in there. It's our estimation that that'll take about 6 to 8 years before that trigger is triggered here with the development. We are just delivering pads now. Those pads will continue to be delivered for the next 2 or 3 years. The homes will be developed on it. But what was not stated in the development or in the staff report was the requirement is in there to be developed, but was uniquely dropped in it was the timing. And that is the concern from our standpoint of seeing public interest here. I've got a couple drone videos here to just show you. I think we all understand the impacts here. Since we have broken ground and I've spent much more time on the property, I had no idea of the impacts of this traffic out here. And I just want to note some of these cars here coming down. This is Highland Ranch Parkway. These cars are traveling in the dirt along here to try and get past these turn lanes and other things. It's actually, there's some safety issues within here. But this is just a midday, excuse me, this is just a midday video that we had the drone fly for us here. That I wanted to show what we see as the public benefit here today. There are approximately 12,000 cars, citizens in Spanish Springs currently that travel Highland Ranch Parkway. As Five Ridges comes online here, this is something that is concerning, and the public benefit that we see here is this is looking at it at one time of the day. I'm sorry. Let's see if I can just advance here. Stop this advance. Excuse me there. Okay, let me go back here. But we see the direct benefit of this is the timing. The SAD allows for us to go in and develop these improvements today. Our cash flows with the lots that are being sold in this pattern does not allow us to go ahead and develop these, nor are we required to develop it at this point. And what our pledge to the council is and to the citizens of Five Ridges and the community is, with the enactment of the SAD, we would go in immediately and develop out these improvements for Highland Ranch Parkway and the Sparks Boulevard. And this is it looking at from the other way. And this is what I just want to show. The benefit to a citizen who's going to move into Five Ridges is the fact that we could develop this. This is the entrance to Five Ridges. And again, we understood that there was impacts here, but I had no idea that the impacts were like this, that the first person that buys in here and comes out of the interchange will immediately drop into a traffic jam that could take 2 or 3 cycles for them to come out of the community here. This is the public benefit that we see here, is that we can accelerate these improvements. The benefits as we see them are directly to each of the citizens within Five Ridges, that they can have a clear traffic flows in and out of their project. This is in the afternoon. The morning it reverses and traffic is jamming going in the other way. And so the direct benefit is to the citizens of Five Ridges, that they would have the ability to get in and out of their community here. The second benefit that we see is to the community as a whole. These citizens that don't live in Five Ridges, and keep in mind that the SID is funded by private citizens that will be homeowners within here. So those homeowners will be funding public improvements. That's the beauty of what NRS 271 was, and I have to tell you, the legislature was really brilliant in what they did, in my opinion. The state of Nevada has an antiquated tax system that I think we all understand that cannot stay up with growth. The growth comes, but the tax does not come to it quick enough. They purposely enacted NRS 271 to help with that. And what that enactment did was allow for private money to be floated through these bonds to build public improvements. There's no burden to the city or counties with the approval of this. You as the city council sit as just a check to it to make sure that this makes sense and that it's right and good for the public. The city of Sparks is not burdened by any of the liability to it or any of your borrowing capacity. But this is the benefit that we see in here, again, going back to it, is directly from the people that will be paying for it will have better traffic flows. The citizens of Sparks and the people that utilize Highland Ranch Parkway will have better benefit to it. One of the other things that we haven't even spoken about is life safety, where cars are pulling into the dirt and going around. Ambulance, fire service, other things would be improved with this to all of the neighboring areas within here. But the public benefit as we see it, and I think, as I mentioned, in the state of Nevada, there are some $9 billion in these. Carter just informed me that they floated a large one down in Henderson last week, whereas these numbers in here, we're talking about a 4.5% interest rate. They floated at 3.62%. So the numbers that we're going to show you are actually more beneficial from it. But our genesis of this is to request this $13.2 million to help the citizens and the public here. And I wanted to address that from our standpoint, and I hope the council can see it, that there is a public benefit here by accelerating these improvements here. I wanted to go back and address a couple other issues. Oops, let me go back and try and. So I wanted to address, oops. We talked about the benefits here. This is a sheet, and I can certainly submit this into the record here, but we want to talk about the benefits. There's direct benefits to each of the homeowners within 5 Ridges for both life safety and traffic flows. There's a benefit to the City of Sparks citizens for the both same ridges, reasons, excuse me. And then the big thing is that we pledged that we would go ahead and develop this immediately here. And I think that is quite telling as far as helping out with the community, both the residents and the community as a whole. One of the other ancillary things we talked about was life safety, but one of, I think everyone might be aware, but if not, there are major hydraulic and flooding issues down at the Pyramid Highway interchange and Highland Ranch Parkway. Part of these improvements that we'll develop in here will help accelerate those flooding and hydraulic issues down there. I believe the city a couple of years ago had quite a bill for cleaning out the silt and other things when it did rain hard and flooded down in that area. We talked about the improvement to life safety. This speaks for itself in that ambulance and fire safety can traverse through the areas better. One of the things that there's a couple questions that have been addressed. Our CPAs and Carter's looked into it. Part of the interest for the SID is tax deductible to the homeowners within here. I wanted to note that. And then one of the other things is they've spoken about, well, what is the true economic benefit? And the free market will determine the house price within these areas. Keep in mind that every builder probably wants to charge $1 million for his home. However, the market comes forward and says, I can only afford X amount for this. So as much as they may want to increase the price, the market will pull them back into what's affordable in here. So the history of SADs are basically that a consumer, when they do come in, there is a mortgage. The SID is basically a mortgage on the property. It is an amount that will be deducted from their borrowing capacity. If a consumer can only spend $1,500 on a mortgage, the SID would be $50, $60 of that. What that does is it brings down, and we've confirmed this with our builders in there, it will bring down the house price from what it would have been able. They could have charged a higher price without that. And what it does is twofold in it. If you run through the economics of it, they basically are getting some of their down payment financed through the SID, and they're getting some of the mortgage payments financed through them. And if you run it through the scenario, what happens is the homeowner has to put down basically on this one, and we used 500,000 just as a random number. If you take a look at it, without the SID, what will happen with us is we will have to increase basically the house price, the land prices to the builders. What this does is allows us to go ahead and lower the land price to the builders, and that's in our contracts, that if we have an SID, the land price is less, so that they can pass that on through to the builder, or to the consumer on here. So we just use an alternative. If we did not get the SID, and the $18 million in improvements that we're seeing down at the bottom of the screen, that would translate into about a $15,000 higher price to the consumer, because we would pass that through in our contracts to the buyer, to the builder. With the SID, though, the house price would not be $515, it'd be $500. And if you run through the savings on their down payment and their mortgage payment, it actually nets down that the consumer would save $7,237 over the life of his ownership, the 30-year time frame of it. And if they were to take that money and to invest it into investments at 6%, that number actually grows to $18,000 in savings by having the SID lower the home price and getting a return on their investment with it. The other things that I wanted to address, if I could. We talked about the timing of this. We have an anticipation with the SID being inside the development agreement and bring it forward. We've been working with staff for several years on this, on educating and trying to get everyone comfortable with it. These residential SIDs are becoming, and if are not the norm in some of the communities around the state, in order to get public improvements built currently versus having to wait for the tax base or these triggers as we have within here. But we've advanced, and we've actually spent approximately $250,000 on those drawings for Highland Ranch Parkway and Sparks Boulevard interchange. Those drawings are ready to be submitted, John, as early as next week, I believe. We are hopeful that we'd have a positive vote on this with this SID, the cash flows. We'd go ahead and submit those immediately. That would allow us to hopefully have those permitted by the end of this year and begin construction either by the beginning of end of this year or the first quarter of next year, which would time in with the first residents coming into Five Ridges and also accelerating the help with the people that are currently burdened on the road system there. I wanted to go through because there were some comments about, and I don't know if I need to go into it too far, but we have several different memos I'd like to put into the record here. But again, the SID is a real estate-based bond. It is based strictly on the land within inside of Five Ridges. It does not burden the city with any of its borrowing capacity with it. And as far as any cost associated with it, we, the developer, actually fund the startup costs on it. We've actually had our councils advance in anticipation of this, but we will pay for the upfront costs of the city to go ahead and float this bond. It's called a deposit agreement, which we deposit with you $150,000 to cover all the cost of the SID, the formation, and your consultants to go through it. And I can hand these to you. John and Jeff, you folks have these already, but I'd like to. There are also, the second comments that have been addressed or brought up is that there may be a burden to the city of Sparks with floating one of these on an ongoing basis. Within the SID, there's actually up to 1% available per year of the bond amount that would be funded into an escrow for the city to draw on. That's about $132,000 a year that would be funded into it. The administration costs for these, this is actually a huge industry across the nation. SIDs are called different things. Mellow Roofs in California, they're SIDs, SADs. It is truly a full segment in the financing markets. But what the City of Sparks staff will actually do will manage consultants on here. As we record final maps and do different things, there will be some requirements that will need to be done to proportion the bonds. We've introduced consultants to city staff on that. The monthly collections would be done by a company that does pretty much all of them in the state, AMG. They are paid a fee for their collections within it. And really this $132,000 is to cover staff's administration time, which we have come to find out that the 1% in a lot of jurisdictions is actually too much money, that they're actually having to give some of the money back. In Las Vegas, Carter, they just...
Clark County just gave back $20 million.
Gave back, of the 1% fees they were collecting, they gave $20 million back to the bondholders because they couldn't spend all the money that was being collected in it. And I've got a little memo on that I want to submit also if I could. And we were talking about the impact. One of your councils actually has a written opinion that the city of Sparks does not, or the jurisdictions do not have liabilities or burdens with it that I'd like to put in. Lastly, we've gone through and actually developed this is the financing agreement. We have submitted this to staff at this point in anticipation of hopefully with a positive vote, we would move in and begin implementing this with your councils to get the bonds floated so that we could develop this out by the end of the year. And with this, you know, some of the other benefits that we see in here is with the acceleration of the dollars, we can go ahead and develop out faster within here. The Five Ridges right now, we estimate, has probably about a $650 million tax base to the city of Sparks. It is a material number. But the I just want to go through and see. You know, and in the report, and staff talks about setting a precedent, I think that it is a wonderful precedent. I think it's something that the council should embrace. These are vehicles that are not burdensome to the city, but allow the city to get the benefit of public improvements. There are improvements that could be built today with the implementation of these. There are future ones that the city of Sparks may want to utilize these for as you go forward. But again, they are real estate based. Yeah, I think I've touched on all the issues within there. I'm also available for any questions or comments as we go through here. But I think our councils, our consultants absolutely see the public benefit and the assistance it could help for both the residents of Five Ridges and the public here. And I'm available for any questions if you have any at this point.
Okay, John, do you have anything else to add, or we go right to questions?
Thank you, Mayor Lawson. To your question, I have nothing else to add at this time, and Jeff and I are available for any questions you may have.
Well, I can see council members writing frantically up here, so I'm sure there's lots of questions. So let's go ahead and start with questions from the council. If you wouldn't mind requesting to speak if that button is active. Mr. Abbott.
Wasn't expecting to be first, everyone. This might be for Mr. Martini. Can we put a time schedule on the three projects? Like if we want one over the other of the three that you identified?
I'm sorry, Councilman Abbott, would you repeat that question for me, please?
Can we put a time, like a time schedule on those three projects, the two, I think there's phase one, phase two, and then the road? Are we able to identify a date of completion, you know, for the road, you know, put a new trigger, I guess, on it, or?
Let me think about your question here for a second.
Sorry.
So, as we sit today, the only thing we have to rely upon, as far as timing goes, is the development agreement.
Got it.
Council has not made a decision today with regard to the SID, nor is the question of timing really I can see a tangent to how you may factor that in.
I got you.
But what I will say today, the only thing we can rely upon with regard to timing, and I think this question is kind of focused towards the Highland Ranch Parkway improvements, is what's in the development agreement.
Got it.
Now, as Mr. Smith said before you, the development agreement was put together and you got to remember, we go back to 2016, 17, finally deliver the development agreement for your consideration in 18. As your professional staff, whenever we have a development, we look at the impacts of that development upon our existing infrastructure. And you've heard us talk about it many times. We use what is classically known as the Nolan-Dolan test, which is a matter of nexus and proportionality for when we ask for off-site improvements. The nexus typically is the impact, you know, there's going to be cars coming out of Highland Ranch, you know, coming out of Five Ridges on the Highland Ranch Parkway. And with regard to proportionality, we have not asked the developer to improve all of Highland Ranch Parkway all the way up into Sun Valley. We targeted that piece from the project entrance down to Pyramid Highway as the proportional share of what he or what the developer is responsible for doing to mitigate that impact. One thing I think that Sparks does very well, along with the nexus and proportionality test, we take another step and say, what is the timing? When does this developer need to execute upon that mitigation so that we can safeguard our infrastructure? We worked very hard at that. Mr. Erickson and his team went through the traffic studies that were done back in 2017, and that's where we landed on, look, this intersection really gets in trouble when about 650 of those homes have people in them. That's why it's tied to C of Os. So I hope that helps with your question. So as we sit today, the only thing you can rely upon as far as timing is what is in the development.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm gonna ask the council, if you just ask one question, we'll go through everybody and then I'll go through again, okay? All right, Mr. Dare.
So I just want to clarify, the only real question we're asking here today, I mean, there's a lot of opinions about everything, is what is good for the public in the sense of public goodwill? Is this, that's the question. And it's one of those things that could not be truly defined, what's in the public interest, and that couldn't really be defined, and you guys went out and tried to put this together, which appreciate, you know, obviously staff, we appreciate always trying to give us good information. But in the very end, in looking at these, I have a hard time understanding why we don't see some of these. How do we not see housing and helping with the missing middle? We've been talking about this for years. This is not a new conversation of this need. Obviously, that road already has, some, I know how traffic tends to be because traffic seems to be like, just because it seems to sit there for a while doesn't mean a traffic study's bad. Because it has a certain level it has to hit. I understand that. But it seems like that traffic over there gets rough a lot of times, and so that's good for the public interest. And this is a tool that is used regularly for this in a lot of cities. And so I don't understand, and I'm a little concerned that we've gone so deep on the negative on something on this when I think the public interest seems to be being met. So I'm a little concerned that we went too deep on the negative personally, on why we shouldn't. But at the same time, I'm just trying to understand how you don't see that.
Okay, I think I heard quite a few questions in there, so I'll do my best.
It's a media training this morning, you would have known about that.
And Councilman Dare, if I leave something out, please come back around. Okay, so.
Sorry, Chris.
As I mentioned before, let's talk about Highland Ranch Parkway. We are your professional staff. The petition is an ask without a reliance on a when. The petition says, we'd like to form the SID. We'd like to include the Highland Ranch Parkway improvements up in it, but it does not guarantee timing. Mr. Smith certainly can talk to timing, but as a staff, we cannot opine on timing. And because of that, it's very hard to say public interest. There is no guarantee with the SID done as we sit today that timing is anything other than what's in the development agreement, which is 650 units or a failure of level of service. Second question with regard to housing, that was difficult for us to find in the public interest. I think we all agree this. The entire Truckee Meadows we're in short supply of housing. I'm not going to argue that. However, to get to public interest, more housing does not necessarily mean prices will come down. I mean, I understand supply and demand, but we are confined as a region. We're running out of land. We get it. The Great Recession left us with a heck of a lot less construction workers than we had back in 2006 as people left the industries. It's hard to get enough contractors to build, so we can't build super fast. And then along comes COVID, the entire supply chain breaks, and now we're having a hard time getting construction materials. So I think all of those are propping prices up. As Mr. Smith said, this is a fair market development. Nothing in the development agreement speaks to classical measures of affordability, such as affixing rents or home prices in terms of AMI. There's no consideration for any kind of cost control. It is a fair market project. I believe Mr. Smith when he says he's tried to negotiate with future land home builders to try and keep costs down. I have no reason to believe he's not being genuine. However, in my experience in development here in Sparks over the last 20 or so years, I know a few things. One, The land prices are free market too. Would be nothing holding Mr. Smith back, unless, I'm not privy to his contracts, to sell the land at the best price he can get. That's what they're in business for. Secondarily, once that land is bought by the homeowners or the home builders, we know them. It's the Lennars, the D.R. Hortons, some of the smaller builders. They take on the risk of building homes, which means they will make as much money on that home as the market will give them. Whether the market's really hot, they're making great money like right now. If the market turns, they bear the risk of that investment and could potentially lose money. But as we sit today, to get to your question about public interest, we don't see the public interest in that. The Five Ridges project is a fair market project. We see, yes, supply might help, but we see no reason to believe just creating more homes is in the public interest. We just can't make that tie. We can rely on what we know about development, and we can rely on what's in the development agreement. That's what your staff does. And then thirdly, Councilman Dare, you have to remember that, as I said in my presentation, we have built a tremendous number of 100% residential developments. I named a few of them: Wingfield Springs, the foothills at Wingfield Springs, Cimarron, Miramonte up on the hill. All of those were built, and the developers bore the cost to do the infrastructure. None of them enjoyed an SID. So we have no precedent. We have no policy that says we do SIDs. That is the standpoint that we took it from, and that is where we came up with our recommendation. We don't see the policy, we don't see the precedent being set by this council or by councils that came before you. And with regard to Highland Ranch Parkway improvements and getting them done earlier, all we can rely on is what's in that DA. And as far as housing goes, my experience is it's a fair market story. The homes will sell with where the market bears. If you ask me where the market's going, I'll tell you I don't know. But as of right now, you've seen what median prices have done in what is essentially Northeast Sparks. They're very high.
Okay. Ms. Bidey.
I just changed my question since I only get one right now. I've got a lot of comments. On this round, okay, I've got a lot of comments, but I have one question. So in kind of a follow-up to what you just said, Mr. Martini, the Highland Ranch Road improvements, Mr. Smith is stating that they will build it now, 2023 versus 2028 to 2030. How can we, in the agreement, or if this is approved, and that might be a legal question, do we have a mechanism that can be part of the agreement or stipulation upon approval? Or am I outside of the realm of where I should be going, Mr. Manager?
I will, for the purposes of discussion right now, assuming the council, let's assume you find this in the public interest, and the resolution that is attached says so, and direction is given to the city manager to start down this SID path. I would look to the subsequent agreements, and I would work with our legal counsel, if it is the council's desire, to see if there's a legal way to say, once the SID is formed and the bonds have been brought to market and sold and the cash is available, that the first project that will be a beneficiary of that cash would be the Highland Ranch Parkway. I don't, as I sit here today, without going through that analysis and working with our legal department, I can't tell you if we're allowed to do that.
All right, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Ted, you want to comment on the legal part of that?
Sure. Thank you. I think Mr. Martini is correct. I do think, though, that because of the various options provided to the council today as it relates to public interest, I think the council could probably bifurcate a particular motion and say that we find that the development of the roadway would be in the public interest as that was defined by Mr. Martini. But we do not find that the other elements of the proposed SID are necessarily in the public interest. So I think you would be free to do that. Because what I'm hearing is that in order to get this road fixed as a consequence of the development, you've got to approve the entire bondable amount. And I don't think legally you have to do that. You could just say, well, we think that the impact on the roadway would warrant a finding of public interest only for that particular, excuse me, portion of the agenda item being presented to you. And I think Mr. Martini has presented you with different cost structures for the different parts of the proposed development in here. So you could, at least bond that portion if you wanted to without bonding the entire amount. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Anderson.
My question is in regard to the burden of an SID. What is the burden on the city and the city's citizens?
Jeff, you want to field that one?
Yeah, I
You
can
want
take it from
you want
the-
me to bring it up?
I could take it from the finance part. There's
Yeah, go
kind of
ahead.
two parts to that, so. Yeah, Jeff Kronk for the record. As far as the burden on the city as it relates to the issuance of the bond itself, these would be issued as limited obligation bonds, which essentially means that we're not even allowed, the city isn't allowed to pledge its full faith and credit. So from just the aspect of paying the bonds back themselves, there wouldn't be a city burden, if you will, to pay that back. We wouldn't need to pledge our general revenues to pay that back. So in fact, we couldn't even do that if we wanted to. The law doesn't allow us to pledge our full faith and credit. What limited obligation means, if I could just explain it real quick, what a limited obligation bond means, is just that you're placing limits as to what's paying those bonds back. Okay, so in this particular case, when it's a special assessment bond, it would be paid solely from the assessments that are assessed on those parcels, those particular parcels. So that's the overall, that's the legal. Now let me tell you about the city burden as it relates to the practical side. There certainly are aspects to administer these. As John mentioned before, we don't have a large precedent. We do have something familiar to us in that we have issued LID bonds, so local improvement district bonds, if you recall, for Legends, which was more commercial, not a residential part. So we do currently manage something similar, but very much smaller as to the number of parcels. So when it comes time to adding parcels to this extent, and this is likely just the start, as if we were to find this in public interest and issue direction to go ahead and issue these bonds, as these continue, they will absolutely burden our staff time. It's not really accurate to compare Southern Nevada to what we have going on here. We would have to ramp up. So I was looking into, as a for example, the 1% set aside that they're talking about that, we would probably burn through that pretty quick. I'm actually thinking within 5 years, we would burn through that. That wouldn't be the experience in Southern Nevada because they already have full staff. Excuse me, just talking to our staff now when we're dealing with and managing our local improvement district, which has less than 50 parcels, to kind of put it in context for you, we're spending 24 to 36 hours a month managing these. So if you multiply that out a little bit, it wouldn't be exact because these are commercial properties and there's a lot more inquiries from the parcel owners saying, hey, what's my balance? We're constantly fielding those kinds of questions. That probably wouldn't happen with residential parcels to the same degree, but it's still there. So I do think as we ramp up, now in years later, if this is truly a precedent set and we keep adding special improvement districts, we're gonna have to ramp up our staff, no doubt about it, to manage this. And we would probably have to more accurately reflect what's going on in Southern Nevada to gauge that. So we would have to build up. So that's part of the administrative burden that's not on the books, so to speak. So kind of a rambling answer, but I hope that helps. And that's just kind of one part of it. We do have to put this on our books. So there is another piece to the financial burden, that we would potentially face. Again, the more this happens, this is relatively small from a dollar perspective, but when we're talking to our ratings agencies, it's kind of hard to tell what ratings agencies are going to put on their radar to say, hey, what's your credit risk? But I do know they talk about Legends and what we issued with the LID, so I can only go based on our experience of what we currently are managing. And they talk about it to me every year. So, if there was a significant default that happened, we absolutely ask or talk about, hey, what does that mean for our credit rating? And it does potentially ding our potential to borrow later. Again, every rating agency looks at that differently, but as we would grow these and they give it to be more significant, it absolutely is an impact.
Councilman Anderson, I think to your question, I can't think of a situation where any special improvement district could take on a rather large burden for staff. It's kind of an unexpected what if, but since I survived the 2008 scenario, and we did see a good number of bankruptcies, in our developments. If this SID is formed and gets underway, and we do go through a big downturn, and there are bankruptcies, I think the thing that would keep me up at night the most is, let's say, we're a third of the way or halfway through phase one of the development. So let's assume that the two villages down on Highland Ranch Parkway are built, and we're up into, we've gone up the Parkway, and now we're up into kind of the center of the project. And we have unfinished, due to bankruptcy, we have unfinished infrastructure, but yet we have new residents living in there. They would likely get concerned about the lack of infrastructure around them and come to this council and ask for help. And if the problems are extension of streets to complete connections, my big concern, of course, is unfinished flood control structures for managing stormwater. I don't think we could get into a situation where sewer pipelines were a problem, because that's a condition of C of O. We could find ourselves in a situation where we have new residents with a need, and we'd have to come out of the general fund and go up and finish some of those projects while we're waiting for the bankruptcy to resolve through bankruptcy court. And the 2008 experience, that can take a while. So all those payments that are on those properties are frozen through the bankruptcy. That we're not even getting necessarily the taxes in on it. And SID does put us in a great lien position. It's not like it can be erased through a bankruptcy court. It's timing of funds coming in. So that's where I think, there's a little stress to think about a condition that could be very burdensome upon the city, unintentionally so, but we would likely have to react to. And that would take a lot of staff. I mean, just about everybody you see down here presenting in front of you, particularly out of the Community Services Department, certainly out of finance, you'd be seeing us all in that case.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a really quick question on hooking up to Sun Valley GID and things like that. When Five Ridges goes to hook up for the GID for both potable and unpotable water, will any improvements have to be made to Sun Valley GID to hook up to those?
None that we are privy to. I know that the developer has worked with Sun Valley GID if the council will recall, we're back a few years here. Getting Tumwa to service this property was very expensive and difficult. Sun Valley GID turned out to be a more effective cost solution. And I do believe Sun Valley GID has required upgrades within the GID from the petitioner developer to be able to accommodate, mitigate the issues they have to pump that water into Five Ridges.
Okay, thank you.
Donald, you had another question? Christopher?
Yeah. So I also, and this is maybe just a theoretical question out there, I just think as a city, since I've been here 6 years, there's always risk in everything we do, and we try to mitigate it. I mean, that's the balance. That's what we're talking about is here as well, which is wise. We have to do that. But I also think that we are a place that I think we want to continue to be a place that we use the tools in front of us to have the best city we can. And I just view this as a tool that, and it's not, if it was just something that we were grabbing out of a Cracker Jack box that no one's ever done, and then we had these concerns, I'd understand where we're coming from. But as I've looked and I've studied and I've seen other ones, and I know it'd be newer to us in a sense. I mean, you'd mentioned the one LED that we have and this and that. And, so I can just say I don't understand truly where you guys have found myself. So I think I'm done with my questions, but my comments, I do believe that I see public interest in this, and I think it's kind of an easy find for me, which that's why part of why I'm a little confused where we find ourselves. Thank you.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of things. NRS created this statute, and we've talked about it on both parties, have explained the NRS and the intent of that to find a way to look at how do we address our broken property tax situation that does not give communities the finances we need for public infrastructure, for all of the things that the city has to, costs that we need. We depend on property tax for that, and that structure is broken, and we all know that. So when we talked about public benefit, and you gave definitions of public benefit, one of them was welfare for the public. The other one was public has a stake. I think the public does have a stake in this. I think the stake that the public has, for me, there's several public benefits that I can see. The homeowners are either going to pay for that infrastructure when they buy the house at a higher cost for the house, and we know it's free market, so I can't tell you today, is that $10,000 or $15,000? Or by the time the home is built, is it $30,000 more for the house because you've added all the infrastructure costs, which the developer has to sell the land with that cost in mind to the home builder, who then has to add that cost onto the bottom line comes to the homeowner. So the homeowner will either pay it now when they buy the home, or they pay it over 30 years, broken down to $60 a month, $70 a month. The amount doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, the cost of the infrastructure is borne by the homeowners. So maybe, that I look at as a benefit. The cost of public improvements are going to be higher tomorrow than they are today. They'll be higher next week, let alone in 5 years or 10 years. So the cost of all of our public infrastructure that we're looking at for this project, we know will just keep rising. So really the biggest public benefit for me in looking at this proposition is the public benefit of the road now. And having that road now is not just a public benefit to those residents of Highland Ranch and Five Ridges, but to everyone who uses Highland Ranch, as evidenced in the drone. And then the bigger one for any of us who drive Pyramid Highway and that intersection and the amount of traffic that's coming all directions, whether it's on Pyramid from Sparks Boulevard, is just, and then Pyramid itself is another story of really our intense traffic and safety and ambulances and public safety, but the traffic flow at that intersection would benefit, a huge portion of the community when you just look at the sheer numbers of traffic that's on it and where those people are coming. They're coming in out of my ward, out of Christopher's ward, Diane's. I mean, all of our wards are affected because there's so much traffic, whether business or residential, traffic that goes through that intersection and along the Pyramid Highway. So the benefits of having that road now, I guess for me, I would want an assurance, not just a promise from a developer who tells me it'll be built now. And I don't know if that's, and I don't want to break it up, what Mr. Adams was saying about breaking down. I see overall public benefit. The number one for me is the road. And I would like, if possible, to have, whether it's a condition, and if that's not possible, I'm okay with that, but the road right now impacts so many that public benefit alone, let alone the others I mentioned, are something that I can find public benefit in what we're looking at today. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Well, that was pretty good. You must have read my mind. I didn't push the button.
I told you I was gonna go down the line. We're going around and around until there's no more questions.
All right. So really, the thing that's got me hung up here is the term public benefit or public interest. And this is one, I mean, I can understand where Councilman Dare and Councilman Bybee are coming from, and I see that, right? We're going to improve roadways ahead of schedule, some of the other things that could be positives. But when you look at the definition, it's concerning the people as a whole, or the general welfare of a populace considered, something in which the public as a whole has a stake. I see the benefit to the people, the homeowners that would be in the development, but I honestly can't say as I see any other advantage to that. And yes, that's part of the public, but it's not the public as a whole. And with that, I don't see that I can support this moving through. Because again, I'm thinking of every one of our citizens. Is there a potential burden on them that, again, like you mentioned, Centex Homes comes to mind to me. They went under and, it had to go through bankruptcy to determine what they were going to move forward with. I see the burden on the city as a whole, not just the staff here, but the city as a whole. And likewise, I can't justify the public interest for this project.
Ms. Vanderwell.
I don't have a question at this time. I just have a statement. Thank you.
Go right ahead.
I would just like to share, because everybody does know my background. Year over year, the rents for one-bedroom apartments in our area have risen 48%. This project brings in variety. It brings in not only single-family residents, but townhomes and duplexes to widen our choices here. And the thing is when we have one-bedroom apartments here now that are averaging close to $2,000 a month, and if you've got a family in a two-bedroom that they're looking at almost $2,500 a month, it benefits them that they have some housing choice. I believe that with this development, we're getting that housing choice in the city of Sparks, and I do find that in public benefit. Thank you.
Mr. Abbott?
I have one for, on the finance side. I believe we were looking, there's 150,000 up front to cover the initial, then 1% every year, right? So $130,000, I think, is just doing the 13 million. That's, I'm assuming, is that one body dedicated to that? Could we, or?
It'd be 1% of the gross bond proceeds, which would be $132,000 up front.
Well, every year.
Every year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I thought I heard different earlier from you, Jeff, and so I just want to double. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Christopher?
I have no further statements, but can make a motion when you would like.
Okay, let me go through the rest of the council
Oh, you're doing the
first.
motion?
Hold
Oh, no
on,
problem.
Hold on. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor. thank
Mr.
you.
Anderson, you have anything else?
No, sir.
Ms. Vanderwell? Okay, so here's where I just have a little math problem. So So the average employee is 2,080 hours a year. And we take 1,300 units, that's that employees doing 1.5 hours of work on every parcel every year for 30 years. I think 132,000 covers that. So I find that that part of it not going to work. However, I understand the precedent part of it, but I also understand that we have to look at things a different way these days. We're not a small town any longer. We are a city, and we got to start thinking like a city. And I think this is a tool for us for the future. Yeah, it's a precedent, but it's an also, let's think about what happens if we get our lands built. How do we build that infrastructure out there to the east of Sparks? You know, this becomes a very big tool for us. I'd sure like to get my feet wet on a smaller 1,300 unit development than I would trying to develop 20,000 acres east of Sparks. So those are my comments. I know I don't have a vote. Those are my comments on it. Is there any questions for the developer at all from the council? Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Dare.
You said it, and I just want to almost, I mean, obviously, there's going to be further conversations on it. If this were to pass, I mean, do you mind putting on the record what you said about building? Would you officially, in a sense, do that right now? That if this thing were to pass, that this thing would get built, and when that road would be done? I think that would be a wise thing for us.
I'm sorry, I was jumping up.
So-
Are you asking for the commitment?
Yes.
You know, I think you guys have legally stated the development agreement. We would be willing to alter the development agreement to move those triggers to immediately with the approval of this.
My only concern about opening things up, I think, that's the one question. When you open that up, they open up a lot of things. So, you know, I appreciate that. Right now, all I'm asking for is a commitment.
Councilman Dare, members of the council, my name is Carter Froelich. I'm going to take this down because I can't hear when I talk.
We have to
Put it up?
ask-
Okay, I'm sorry.
Speak loud.
Yeah, I'm the managing principal of Launch Development Finance Advisors. And to Councilman Dare's question, what we could do as part of the development financing agreement, which is the operating agreement for the SID, is we could make Highlands Parkway a primary infrastructure, meaning, as you saw on the cost estimates, we're looking at financing $19 million worth of public improvements. However, there's only about $11 million of net construction proceeds. We could make sure that the first 4.6 million, 4.7 million went to improve Highlands Parkway. So, and that would be part of the district financing agreement. It would be part of the engineering report. And then whatever other projects were able to be financed, be that phase one or phase two. At some point, we're going to run out of money. But that way you could be assured that that improvement would be built and we wouldn't have to open the development agreement. It could be part of the agreement that Mr. Smith provided earlier.
I think there's multiple ways to do it, Councilman. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Bybee,
I'm ready for a motion.
if you're ready for a motion, we'll take it.
We can get the motion up on the.
Did you want us to comment to any of staff's comments or? Okay,
Didn't ask you any questions.
thank you.
Okay, so I'm just waiting for a motion.
Yes.
I'm going to go out on a limb here because I feel like what I'm hearing from that the motion is going to be to find that it is in the public interest. So if that is indeed the case, somebody please nod so that we make sure we get the right language up there.
That's what my motion is
Okay,
going to be.
that's, yeah.
I can't tell you if it's going to pass.
Right, but yes,
That's
but
a
I'm
motion.
just trying to make sure we put the words you want to see up on the screen.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I make this motion, a quick comment to staff as far as recognizing, the impact of what this means to staff, but I also, my understanding is that we're going to be overseeing consultants. So a lot of that work, in my understanding, will be done by consultants, and I really think because I'm very cognizant and concerned about, what does that mean to our staff? But I agree with the mayor also. We have to find new ways of doing business, and I think this is an innovative way the state has given us that has worked in other jurisdictions, and I think gives us some opportunity, and will work to make it work. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to approve the resolution finding a petition for the formation of a special improvement district and issuance of approximately $13,247,000 of special assessment bonds to finance infrastructure improvements at the Five Ridges development located at 555 Highland Ranch Parkway in Sparks, Nevada, is for the public interest, and with the condition that the Highland Ranch Pyramid Way improvements are made part of that agreement with the city manager, per the city manager, that we can have that. I'm wording it really badly, I'm sorry.
You get the gist.
That the conditions that be, however those conditions are set, but I'm directing the city manager to work with, including that as part of the condition of this motion and of the public interest.
I got a motion. Are you clear, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir, I am.
You?
Okay, sorry.
Mr. Dare?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries 4-1 with Mr. Anderson voting against. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff.
Appreciate it.
This is a tough deal for all of us. Okay, we have no public hearing items, and we have no planning and zoning items. Comments from the public. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any public comment at this time.
Okay, announcements from the mayor, city council, city manager. Mr. Manager, you have anything?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. We're at the tail end of what was an odd meeting for us as a body, where this meeting, we brought to you a significant policy decision. We presented, a recommendation from staff. I want to commend staff on doing a good job in making the recommendation and supporting the arguments that they made. I also want to commend the council for asking good questions and ultimately reflect upon this as a method of the process of government working. You are here as our policy setting body, and it is our job as your staff to carry out the policies that you set for us. You have clearly done that today. And I don't want anybody to feel like that this was a council or council developer or developer versus staff, and anybody versus staff. That is not the way that staff has perceived this today at all. Frankly, we enjoyed the process of going through this work, considering these questions, wrestling with these questions, arguing amongst ourselves as to what kind of recommendation we wanted to make and how to best make it. To go through the rehearsals to get here today was all a worthwhile effort for us. And, we heard your message loud and clear today. We will absolutely honor it and take your direction going forward. But thank you for hearing us out and for giving us clear direction.
Okay. I'm going to reopen public comment. Bill snuck this in on me. I should have known you were going to speak. Yep.
Sit next to them. Oops. I guess I gotta sit next to this thing, right? Yeah. My name is Bill Wagner for the information. Question I have, number one, is what are we gonna do about police and fire departments to protect these people? That's the number one question. Number two question I have is, who owns the roads going into it? Does the city own the roads, or does the developer own the roads? Those are questions I have.
Okay.
And I would like to.
We'll have the city manager get with you after the meeting. Okay,
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for coming. We love having you here. Okay. Anybody from the council wishing announcements? Donald?
Yeah, I'd like to give direction to our city manager to investigate to allow marijuana dispensaries to use drive-throughs for pickup of already ordered products here in Sparks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dare?
I want to thank our police chief and our police. I got to be a part of a Martin Luther King caravan that went through our city and then into Reno, and they actually were there, and they helped everything kind of happen freely, and everyone was safe. But it was just, I think it was really great for our community, and I don't think sometimes everyone realizes all the things that happen. But that was a pretty, it was a pretty cool thing to be a part of, and being out there with as many vehicles as we had. So obviously a very big week for many, and something that has one person shapes everyone's life. It's pretty crazy, all the, even talking to Donald, all the different sayings and the different quotes that we all live and we look at, and we say, yeah, that's good that Martin Luther King Jr. put together. But it was a great day to honor him, but it was, thank you, Chief, for your police being there.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you, everyone. I know it's always tough when we go against the staff's recommendation, but we still love you. I hope you still love us, and away we go. We all got to live together in this little place here, so thank you, guys. All right, with that, we're adjourned.
Okay, I'm going to ask for just a minute, and we will convene the redevelopment agency meeting. I just need staff to get us set up. So give me about 2 minutes. Okay. We all good? Everybody up? Everybody on? Okay. Are you guys ready down there? Is Nick ready? Oh, Lisa's helping. Okay. Okay. Ready, Lisa? Okay. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency of Monday, January 24th, 2022, with a roll call.
Chairperson Bybee?
Here.
Agency members Lawson?
Here.
Abbott?
Here.
Vanderwell?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Dare?
Here.
Chief Legal Officer Adams? Chief Administrative Officer Kreutz?
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 3, public comment, 3.1. Do I have any public comment? No. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4. 4.1, approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve. Agency Member Abbott?
Sorry.
That just rocked the whole dais.
I move.
Glad I didn't say any bad words.
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Okay, thank you. Agency Member Vanderwell?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. We move on to item number 5, minutes. Consideration, discussion, possible approval of the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting for December 13th, 2021. Do I have a motion? Agency Member Vanderwell?
I move to approve the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting for December 13th, 2021.
Agency Member Dare?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Otherwise, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Consent item 6.1, consideration and possible acceptance of the report of the claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of December 1st, 2021 through January 10th, 2022. Looking for a motion. Agency Member Anderson?
Move to accept the report of claims and bills and appropriation transfers for the period December 1st, 2021 through January 10th, 2022.
Aye. Thank you. So I have a motion. Agency Member Dare?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Item 8, 8.1, comments from the public. Do I have any public comments? Seeing none. Announcements for 8.2, announcements from the agency and Chief Administrative Officer. Anything? Okay, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.